In Naples, in the century when fairy tales were still being written down by men who had heard them from women who had heard them from the dark, there lived an ogress who kept a garden the whole neighborhood feared. Not because the parsley was poisoned, because the owner counted debts in flesh. This is the story of Petrosinella, Little Parsley, the girl whose mother craved a green she could not buy and paid for it with a promise she did not understand until the child was born with herbs in her hair. It is older than the tower tales most people know. It is stranger. And it begins, as many old Italian stories do, with hunger and a wall that should not have been climbed. There was a poor woman, heavy with child, who walked past the ogress's garden every day until the smell of parsley made her ill with wanting. She scaled the wall after dark and stole a handful of the green. The ogress caught her by the wrist and smiled the way creditors smile when the debtor has made a mistake in public. "You have taken what is mine," she said. "You will pay with what you carry. When the child is born, the child is mine." The woman promised because promises made in fear are still promises in fairy tales. The baby came with a sprig of parsley twined in her dark hair. They named her Petrosinella. For 7 years, the mother hid her. On the 7th birthday, the ogress came for payment. The ogress built a tower of whitewashed stone in a field where no road passed and put Petrosinella inside with food, water, and a window too high for ordinary escape. The world below became a rumor. Petrosinella grew tall and learned to sing because singing was the only thing the tower could not lock away. She wore plain cream linen with a high collar and a green ribbon in her braid. She was not a princess in silk. She was a debtor's daughter. Below, 2 young princes heard the voice before they saw the face. That is always how desire begins in these tales, with sound traveling farther than permission. The princes came at dusk with a ladder woven from stout linen rope. They climbed one at a time while Petrosinella held the top steady and learned what another person's hand felt like when it was not collecting a debt. They visited many nights. She brought songs and the dangerous hope of someone who has nothing left to lose but the wall. In some tellings, she loved one prince. In others, she loved both. What matters is that for a little while, the tower was not the whole world. But towers have servants, and servants have tongues that wag for kitchen coins. A maid in the ogress's house saw the ladder's shadow on the grass and ran to tell her mistress what the knight had been hiding. The ogress came with shears meant for garden stems and the calm of someone who believes property rights extend to daughters kept in stone. While the princes climbed, she cut through the linen rungs above them and below Petrosinella's window. Petrosinella tied the remaining rope around her waist and called down to the princes to jump with her into the thorn hedge below. Thorns tear cloth and skin. They also catch those who fall when witches think gravity belongs to them. The princes landed bleeding but alive. Petrosinella landed bleeding but standing. The ogress leaned from the window to see her payment escaping and jumped after them. The hedge was old and iron-hard, grown for keeping out, not for looking pretty. The ogress fell into it the way debts fall due when the calendar runs out of patience. The field was quiet afterward in the way fields are quiet when a predator has mistaken itself for prey. Petrosinella cut thorns from the prince's sleeves with a pottery shard she had kept since childhood. They walked toward the road until torches appeared, and men with titles asked questions she was finally free to answer. She told the truth in order: the garden, the promise, the tower, the ladder, the shears, the hedge. Only the ogress was missing from the ending she had planned. There was a wedding because fairy tales from Naples know that survival deserves a feast even when the road to it was lined with thorns. Petrosinella wore green and gold and the high collar of a woman who no longer apologized for wanting things that grew in earth. Some versions say she planted parsley in the palace garden so no one would forget the price of craving without asking. What I remember is simpler. She was taken for a handful of leaves. She came back on her own feet. This was forgotten Fables. This was Petrosinella, from Basile's Pentamerone, the Italian root of 100 later tower tales. Follow the channel when you want the next story the loud world forgot.